We are we are live here on American Hammers TV. So far, we have just one person in the chat room, but I'm sure that'll increase as we go along here. Special guest today from the We Are Westham podcast, Will Pugh. Do you go by Will?
Yeah, Will's good, man. Yeah.
Okay. Will, thanks for joining us, man. How are you today?
Yeah, doing very well. A little bit upset about yesterday still, but it's just been I think it was like the worst performance of the season. So that was a bit of a shock and a bit of a disappointment. But other than that, yeah, life's treated me well.
Good. Yeah, that match was 6:30 in the morning here, and so I had a friend going away party for a friend the night before, so I got a little rowdy, and so I didn't wake up for the 6:30. I'm glad I didn't, because by all accounts it was, like you said, the worst performance of the year.
Yeah,
I think there are questions now starting to be asked of some of the players, but at the end of the day, did you really? I mean, we're the gift that keeps on giving. If you're a team that had a point in a while, hasn't scored goals in a while, are in a desperate need of a win,
Westham, here you go. Yeah,
you hope to see us, and of course I know we've won the last two of the last three matches versus those guys, but historically we've always performed pretty poorly against Everton, especially at Goodison. So
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, last year obviously we felt like we broke the duck a little bit, where we got the win there, and we've sort of picked up a couple in recent years. But yeah, beforehand, you guarantee that Goodison Park away at Everton was you wouldn't get anything there for West Ham for years and years and years. Massive bogey club of ours. Even at home, we always struggled. They're always they're a good side, especially under David Moyes. But you kind of even yesterday, I just had a feeling we've played well. I've been confident going into most games this season, and even yesterday, you could just tell there was just something about it. Exactly what you said, really. They're desperate for a win. Club in turmoil. Step forward, West Ham, and here's 3 points to get you back on track. So, yeah, I think it's frustrating more than anything, really. I just think I honestly thought there was quite a lot of uproar after the Crystal Palace game, and while I was annoyed, it was frustrating. I think we played well on the day. They were clinical with their chances. Declan Rice with the 1 in a million handball that you wouldn't do that to. Yeah. So I wasn't too despondent, unlike a lot of people on Twitter were after that game. But yesterday, yeah, that was by far and away the worst performance of the season. And I think we had one coming. To be honest, we had one coming.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, and we'll definitely talk a bit about how West Ham's recent form. Tim, our fearless leader, Tim, did want me to mention to everyone that is watching, which right now is only 3 people, but for those who are watching not live, to visit our shop. We got a lot of merch available. We got T-shirts. I think we have some sweatshirts, some scarves as well. But yeah, that's ahtv.threadless.com. AHTV, American Hammers TV.threadless.com. So I wanted to mention that out there, give that a shout out. So Will, I want to bring it back to the beginning though. So you're English. Are you from London originally?
Yeah, I was born just outside the city in Essex, little county just bordering London. But it's a half an hour train ride into East London from where I grew up. But now I can see the stadium from one of the windows in my apartment. So.
Okay, so can you actually see the stadium, or is it that red looking slide thing?
Both, actually, both. Luckily enough, I can see both. But yeah, it's 15 minutes from my front door to my seat where my season ticket is. So it's pretty handy, that's for sure.
So, were you born into West Ham? Like, were your parents West Ham, or did you choose West Ham on your own? How did you become West Ham?
No, very much a hereditary condition with that, I'm afraid. That was my dad and his dad.
I like how you refer to it. I like how you refer to it as a condition.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. If there's any other genetic disorders I've had passed down to me, I'm sure not many of them are as painful as the West Ham disease. Yeah. But my granddad, I think we were chatting about it the other day. I think he went to his first game in 1948, I think.
Wow.
So then he was just going all of his life. He was born in the East End. He was going all of his life. Then when my dad was born, same thing, started taking him. And then, yeah, my dad just went. And then there's 3 generations of us have been going together since I think I went to my first game when I was 4. Everton at home, actually, funnily enough, 2-2. I cried when the first goal went in because it was so loud. But by the time we equalised, yeah. But by the time we equalised later in the game, I'd got the hang of it, and that was the bug really. Then that was when I was 4, and then first season ticket I got when I was 9, I think, and that's me, my dad, and my granddad who've been going together for the last 20 odd years now, or 23, 24 years. So yes, it's pretty cool, but it's one of those things, like touched on it before, and plenty of people who support West Ham, they don't really do it for the glory. It's more just it's the tradition and being part of something.
Yeah, no, that's awesome that you, your dad, and your granddad for a couple decades now have been doing that. I feel like having season tickets and like going with your family is definitely more of at least an English sporting tradition. You hear those types of stories a lot more than over here in America. I've always wondered why. I mean, I was telling you earlier before we started, I had season tickets for the Chicago Cubs, where my dad would take me. But yeah, you don't hear a lot of those stories. But it's awesome, like that you just kept it in the family, and like you said, you've kept the condition going. But again, it's not for the glory. It's for a lot more than that. Okay, so yeah, you became West Ham, and you said so you had a season ticket. Where did you sit in the bowl end?
In the East End, so the old chicken run. So I was in the upper tier, 4 rows from the front, in line with the penalty area down the Bobby Moore end. And I'd say, I've been pretty lucky with my seats at the London Stadium. They're still pretty good. But we said it time and time again with the seats at the East End. We thought they were just the best seats in the league because the stand was so small and old. It was you were elevated a bit, but you were still so close to the pitch. And with a lot of the modern stands now, they're obviously slanted back quite a lot. But it was a fantastic place to watch football from. And same sort of thing, just kind of tradition creeps in, sat in the same seats from when I was 9 to when we left. And I was one of the few thousand who bought this and when they knocked the seats and all that. So I actually got in my flat at home. I've got a seat, the old seat I used to sit in, which is pretty cool.
So the Bobby Moore end, was that the end away from the away fans?
That's it. Yeah, the opposite end. Yeah, sort of the heart and soul of the atmosphere, and a lot of the hardcore sort of supporters were seated in that Bobby Moore end, and that's really where a lot of the atmosphere, which was obviously well documented, how famous the atmosphere at Upton Park was on occasion. A lot of that would start in the Bobby Moore lower. It was very much the true hardcore dedicated section of the stadium. It was great. It was just a great place to watch football, to be honest, for a lifetime. It was brilliant, and I do miss it a lot.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go see a match during that last season, and I sit in that Bobby Moore, the Bobby Moore stand, upper deck, pretty close to the very top, probably like 5 or 6 rows from the top. But it makes sense what you just said about having a lot of the atmosphere. I felt it. It was buzzing around me. It was I don't know if you remember. You may. It was at home to Palace. Czech Kouyaté was sent off with a straight
Dimitri
red.
Payet,
Mark Clattenburg.
Ridiculous free kick.
Yeah, and yes, and the thing about that was, and this was a coincidence. We didn't plan this out, but it was me and there were 3 or 4 other guys from Chicago that came with, and it happened to be I don't know, like International Supporters Day or something like that. And we actually got to walk around the field at halftime.
Oh, wicked! Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah, and that Payet goal, maybe the 40th, 41st, 42nd minute, something like that. So we had been brought down, so in advance of halftime, so we could just start right away. And so we were field level, granted on the opposite side of the field, but we were field level. And I have a video, and you can just see the ball, how it just dips in. Amazing moment, an amazing moment. A moment I'll never forget.
It was It's funny, we for the We Are West Ham, obviously the platform that me and James Jones run. I recently recorded a podcast, a one-off, like a nostalgia series, and me and a friend and colleague of mine just sat for a couple of hours just talking about that last season at Upton Park. We sort of went through it, things we remember, just from our own personal experiences. Obviously, we both go to the game, so he remembers one game that he said to all his friends that if we don't win tonight, I'm not going to propose to my wife, and we won. So he proposed to his our wife the next day, and just little bits and pieces like that. And one of the things we were talking about on that was that Crystal Palace game. How it's one of those games where you just those vivid little moments of a whole season. You watch 90 minutes of football 19, 20 times or whatever if you got home season tickets. And how that Payet memory, you'll never forget that if you were there watching that ball go in.
No, I mean, yeah, I would never forget that. My friend next to me, he said he was going to score too, so he called it, and it was a magical moment, especially for someone who, obviously, that was my first time there. My first professional soccer game that I've ever been to.
Yeah.
And so it was a special moment for me. Unfortunately. Czech got sent off with a straight red. Clattenburg sent him off. Shouldn't have been a red. And then and I think Adrian made a mistake as well for their first goal. So it had everything, it had everything.
Yeah, sure.
Spirits went down, spirits went up, and then spirits came crashing down again. But what a season that was. And that was my first season. My first season really, I watched every single minute of every single match. And I mean, what a magical season, especially given the fact that it was the last season at the Bowen. Do you think that had anything to do with it? The fact that it was sort of this is the last season around. The atmosphere may have been picked up a little bit. What are your memories around that season, and why do you think we played so well?
I just think everything came together at once. We were absolutely crying out to get rid of Sam Allardyce. Certainly I couldn't stand watching the football under Allardyce anymore. I just completely had enough of it. So I think Bilic coming in was a breath of fresh air anyway. And, as he's shown it at most of the clubs he's been at, his initial impact is always fantastic. And he then tends to flake off pretty much what he did.
West Brom's doing well. West Brom is doing
that's it. Yeah, they're doing all right at the moment. He had the same when he managed in Turkey as well. Had really strong starts to his career and then just sort of tailed away. I think Bilic coming in was huge, and I just think that undoubtedly there was some of that. The fact it was the last season on Upton Park wouldn't have been wasted on many of them players. And you'd have had Mark Noble there drumming that into every single player in that team. I think obviously bringing Payet in and how well he played. People talk about Payet a lot, and he was fantastic. But I think the key to Payet was the players he had around him as well. Every single player in that first 11 had the season of their life. I think barring Lanzini, perhaps, no West Ham player in that squad from that year has hit that form again for us. Yeah. I think Lanzini's probably the only one who's got close. I think Sacco was hugely underrated. I think his running and work rate off the ball meant that defenders couldn't just focus on Payet. That gave him the space to work in and do what he did. Same as Lanzini, he was fantastic that year. The opposition defences didn't just have to worry about Payet. They had so many people to worry about that it just freed up space for everyone. And like I said, I think that was the key. Every single player in that 11 had the best year of their footballing career, barring perhaps Lanzini, I think, that season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And not many people make that point. Like you said, a lot of people talk about Payet. Now, granted, I do believe that Payet was our best player. Without him, we obviously would not have been. We obviously would not have done as well. But of course, soccer is a team sport. You can't just do it with one guy. You have to have that sort of that playmaker. He was our most talented player. But yeah, Mark Noble had his best season. Cresswell, although the year before Cresswell, his first year with us, but the season before it was very good with us. But he also had a good year. Winston Reed, that was his last good year for us as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Mikel Antonio was a nice revelation coming on.
Mikel Antonio was outstanding that year, wasn't he? Again, he was just a complete revelation. And that's what I think. It was was definitely 11 players who were fantastic. Kouyaté was unplayable. I used to call him the poor man's Yaya Toure, and he was like that, wasn't he? He was just absolutely unplayable. Noble was pulling strings left, right, and centre. The whole 11, and the other thing, the 11 picked itself as well. And I think even the players that came in and filled in, Epitomizes was there that season. People completely forget about him. Actually, he played really well for us. It was just one of those times everything came together nicely at once. And I think, unfortunately, I thought this season was going to be the first time we might threaten to get close to that sort of thing, where it feels like there's a sense of real unity. But yeah, I think looking back, the way we sent off that, the way we said goodbye to Upton Park over that whole season was just perfect.
And then what a match to end it too. The United match where we came back and won. I remember we were in the pub that we were always at in Chicago, and it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So we all, there were 20, 30 of us. We all were sick that day or just didn't go into work. And I remember, we actually have a couple guys in the Chicago crew that are from the East End. Matt, our leader, he's from Dagenham, so really close. You had a couple of guys, when the final whistle blew, you got some tears in their eyes, and you just realized like how much that stadium and how much not only the actual stadium. I think it wasn't just the stadium; it was the atmosphere around it, the people that you sat next to week in, week out, going to the Ribman, going to the Boleyn pub. I only went there one time, and the atmosphere for me was just electric. And I could only imagine someone going there week in, week out for 15, 20 years, how much you're not just going to miss the Boleyn, right? You're not just going to miss your seats, but you're going to miss that entire experience.
Yeah, exactly that. It was just tradition. It was just part of, and I often have this conversation with like a very good friend of mine. He's a Liverpool fan, and he grew up in the same town as me. He doesn't go to Liverpool rarely. He's probably, the amount of times he's been is probably, you can count on one hand. Big follower, supports them, watches all the games and all that sort of stuff. I often have that conversation with him, how there is a difference in the type of football fan you are, because for me, from such a young age, it was just part of my life, and that can be good and bad. In that there was plenty of seasons and plenty of times in my life, I mentioned Allardyce there, where it would get to a Friday and I'd be at work and someone would say, "Oh, what are you up to at the weekend?" And I'd go, "Oh, I've got to go to football." I'd be absolutely gutted, but it was almost like I didn't have the choice to not go. It was just, "Oh yeah, well, it's Saturday and I've got my season ticket, so I'm going to football, whether we were playing well or not." And I think that's what it is. It's just been part of my life for so long that that was one of the main things we spoke about on that last day. Again, it was me, my dad, and my granddad just sat in the same thing. It was just routine. We'd always pick him up at the same time. We'd drive to the game. We'd park in the same sort of place, do the same walk, and you'd know what you were doing every single week. And I think that we made a real point that last game of not doing anything different. Like, there was obviously a lot of people went up really early. We did go up slightly earlier, but we still did the same thing we'd always done, and just made a point of savouring it. We all got in the car together, drove the same route, parked in a similar spot. We did get there early to go and soak in the atmosphere and stuff, but we just did that routine because that's what football meant to us. Do you know what I mean? And I think it meant so much, so many different things to so many different people. And I think that was perhaps underestimated by the club massively when the move was mooted and obviously pulled off in the first place.
And let's talk about that. Human beings naturally don't like change too much, anyways. And obviously, and I've also been to the London Stadium as well, as I mentioned. I think before we went live. So, yeah, I see the dichotomy between the two. And the difference is massive, both in not just the actual stadium, but that experience, that ambiance around it. Heading into the London Stadium, what were your thoughts and feelings on just the future of the club? Were you excited about the prospect of becoming a quote unquote bigger club? Were you sad? Both? What were your thoughts and feelings moving to the London Stadium?
ultimately, and I still feel the same way now, I don't feel comfortable with the level of investigation that was done into doing up Upton Park, because I think that East Stand, like I mentioned earlier, while I loved sitting in it, it was crying out to be just knocked down and rebuilt
Yeah.
again. And we've seen with Anfield recently how
Yeah.
successful that can be. They've put that extension on the main stand, added 20,000 or however many seats it was onto that main stand at Anfield. They've still got that history there. And that was what I just felt that wasn't, we were a bit misled, or that was brushed over very quickly. Any questions relating to the development of the East Stand? Because I think ultimately, I don't think West Ham, they're not a 60,000, we haven't got a 60,000 core supporters.
Right.
Ultimately, it was too much of a bigger jump. I felt like Upton Park was too small for us. I feel like 45 or 50 push may have been just right to maintain what it is to support West Ham and what it was to play Upton Park, which is the atmosphere and, like I say, the history. That was a massive part of it, which you don't get at the London Stadium. Every time you went to Upton Park, you knew what had gone before. You knew that Trevor Brooking had played on that pitch. You knew Billy Bonds had played on that pitch. Julian Dix, Bobby Moore, all of these myriad of different legends, footballing heroes had played at the exact same pitch you were looking at then. So I was really concerned that there was very little conversation about the prospect of developing Upton Park. It was very much the infrastructure's not good enough around it, and the bus garage out the back is quite a technical response to this, but there was a big bus depot out the back of the East End which served all of East London. There's no way that can be moved, and now there's flats there where the ground used to be. Miraculously, they've sorted the bus station problem, and I just felt it was all a little bit, we don't want to answer any questions about the redevelopment because we've already decided we're moving. So that's how I felt at the time. That still sticks with me now. But I was also, as I am in my life, I was quite pragmatic about it. Just that basically it's happening, and just get on board with it and try, and it will be brilliant, and it has been brilliant to sit in a stadium where there's 55,000 West Ham fans in the same place. That's fantastic. We couldn't get that before. I don't buy into the arguments about the atmosphere at the new place. I think the same rules apply as they did at Upton Park. When West Ham are playing well and we're winning games and they're against big teams that we want to beat, the atmosphere is fantastic and second to none. But by the same token, if we're playing badly against teams we feel we should beat, or the players aren't putting the effort in, the atmosphere is poor. It was exactly the same at Upton Park. So I don't really buy into the atmosphere argument too much, and it frustrates me a little bit because it tends to come from fans and or journalists, certainly in England, who haven't been to the stadium before.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've only been there one time. Where, by the way, where do you sit at the London Stadium?
So it's very similar. I sit in to where I was before. So I'm in the Billy Bonds stand, which is the East Stand opposite where the players come out.
Okay.
And yeah, so I'm sort of in the corner. Again, I'm the opposite end to the away fans, and I'm sort of in line with the penalty area.
Yeah. So when I went to the Burnley match a couple seasons ago, the first half I was up. I don't know what section number. I was up there. I was up there. And then we met some guys that brought us into the corner, opposite the corner of the away fans, where the away fans are.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I sit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we were brought there by some guys who are season ticket holders there. Now, when I was up in the first half, I actually did think that the atmosphere was lacking a bit, and we were actually played well in that first half. And I just felt like it was just, the stadium was too large. There weren't a lot of chants going. It didn't feel loud at times, and I also felt a mile away from the pitch. When you went to the corner, even though the second half was poor performance, you could tell that it just seems like because you were closer to the pitch, the atmosphere was a lot better. So I definitely think that even though I was just 4 or 5 rows away from the very top of the Bobby Moore stand at the Bow-Inn, I never felt that there wasn't good atmosphere there. Even though I was near the very top, I felt right on top. of the field, even though I was way back. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say I disagree with you, but I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like, at least from my experience, there was a lack of atmosphere at times. However, I'm sure that if you get that place rocking, 55,000, 60,000 fans chanting, being on the same page, I think we've seen some of that in some of the Spurs matches that we played them there.
Definitely, yeah.
I think the potential is there. I mean, just from what I've read, though, I know you said journalists are sometimes overstate the lack of atmosphere.
That is me as well, to be fair.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I definitely think at the end of the day, winning will cure all. If you put a quality product on the pitch, you know, that's the end all be all. The end all be all right there.
Yeah. No, that's it. And I must admit, I think with the atmosphere thing, that, like you mentioned the Tottenham game there, we've beaten Tottenham, we've beaten Chelsea there. The Chelsea game in the Cup was the first one where I remember thinking, wow, that was that first season when we beat them, and thinking, wow, this is going to be fantastic. There's going to be so many brilliant occasions. Yeah. And there has been since the United game the other week. Absolutely fantastic atmosphere in the place.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely brilliant. And it's funny enough, a friend of mine sits right up the top, similar to where you were describing. He sits sort of in that same corner, but literally in the back row. And I watched the first half of the United game with him there. And even there, it was just brilliant. You really felt, I just felt the whole stage, like exactly what you said, though, everyone was on the same page. So I just think, like I say now, there's no good hankering back to Upton Park, because if you go there now, there's just a load of a big apartment block. So
right, yeah.
that's not going to change. I sort of feel like there's no point hankering after it too much now that we've got what we've got. And I totally understand people who stay away and don't want to come there anymore because they don't recognise the football club. I understand that, but you know, everyone's got that choice, haven't they? That's the choice of those people. But I'm just trying to choose to. I couldn't choose to not have a football club anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've just got to make the best of it, really, haven't we?
No, I think that's really the best attitude you can have. And I know it's sort of hypocritical for me to say that we shouldn't. I agree with you that looking back and say, oh, Upton Park this, Upton Park that, it's not going to do anyone any good. We're not there anymore. It's gone. It's literally gone. I know it's hypocritical because I just asked you about it. Although I'm just curious as to what, especially, you know, born and bred fans think about it. But at the end of the day, I think there will be a time, and maybe the time is now, to stop asking about it, because at the end of the day, it is a world-class stadium. It was built for the Olympics. It's not built for football. I understand that, but it is, you know, a world-class facility. And if dealt with correctly, and so far the owners haven't really dealt with it correctly for the most part, but if dealt with correctly over time, it can be built into, or at least modified into, one of the best soccer stadiums in the world. I personally think it can.
I think what's going to happen, I think 2 points there. You've hit the nail on the head. That Burnley game that you said you went to was poisonous. That was one of the darkest days I've had supporting West Ham ever. Probably the worst. Just remember thinking, what is going on with my football club here? When it was just utter chaos. I've never seen anything like it.
And there was literally a mob of people.
Yeah, that's it.
I've never seen anything like that, sporting or otherwise.
No, well, that's right. But ultimately, Justin, what you had there, and while you can't condone the actions of the individuals, I totally understood it. I totally got where they were coming from. It might have been the way they manifested itself. That anger probably, obviously, didn't sit well with the board, and it's easy to condemn. What you've got to remember is that these people, football is for so many people in this country and around the world, but in this country, it's so part of the fabric. It's people's lives you were messing with there. When you moved from Upton Park, this is people's lives. And the deal was, the explicit deal that the fans were told was, look, we're taking you away from your spiritual home. However, your football team will be better on the pitch. That was the deal. We're moving to this new place. We are taking you away from your spiritual home. Things will change. We appreciate you don't like it. but to compensate you for that loss, because that's what it was a loss to people. To compensate you for that, you will be cheering on a team who will be challenging for Europe every year. And at that time, when we played Burnley, I think we were something like 17th in the league. We're under David Moyes, another short-term manager who played awful football. No fans were excited by it, and that's what you get. You can't promise 60,000 or however many hundreds of thousands of West Ham fans around the world, but if you say 60,000 people regularly go to West Ham, on and off in a season, to at least 2 or 3 games in a season, plus season ticket holders, you can't promise something to that many people and then not follow through on your end of the deal. You can't do that. And I think that's where that comes from, which I think, just to go full circle, ratifies your point about that winning will cure that, because that's what we were promised. That was the deal. We could hack relegation battles at Upton Park because we were used to it, and that's what supporting West Ham was almost about. No one does it for the glory, and it's part of the identity. But we were told that was going to stop, and for a long time it didn't. And I think this season is the first season where it's finally starting to look like they're following through.
Yeah, that's a great point, because all these promises were made. All of these promises were made and not kept. It would be one thing if the owners said, "Listen, our long-term goal is for a team to challenge for Europe, but maybe the first couple seasons don't quite yet have the funds to build a team that is challenging for Europe all the time." Because in those first seasons, the money wasn't being dropped. It was signing another person on loan or
Sofiane Feghouli, just absolute nobodies,
free chat, And so, if the owners said something along the lines of, it'll be a couple years, but after a few years, we're gonna literally put our money where our mouth is. And now let's focus on some positives here. The last 2 summers, they've done what they said they would do. Nearly £100 million spent last summer, 45 million pound net spend this summer. Obviously a world-class manager, a Premier League winner, a manager who's managed Real Madrid, the biggest club in the world, in my opinion. And I think most importantly, a director of football who also has camaraderie and a rapport with the manager. So they're on the same page. They have the same philosophy. They have the same idea of what culture and identity they want to build. Are the fans over? Do the fans over in England, are they starting to give credit a little bit where credit is due to the 2 Davids for stepping back, hiring a director of football, world-class manager, spending money? Or is it still more along the lines of, okay, like, you're doing what you said you were supposed to do, finally, thank God? Like, what is the attitude towards the owners now?
I mean, I think I'm very careful all the time not to get too caught up with. Certainly last summer when we spent 100 million quid, I think they had no choice. You're not telling me that after the scenes you witnessed them firsthand, as did I, and as did thousands of others, and they saw them on screens around the world. That Burnley game, they had no choice. They had to do something, because it was literally chaos. Like, it was threatening. That could have blown up the entire club. People clearly weren't standing for it anymore. So they had absolutely no choice that first summer. And also £100 million, like you say, I was always wary to say, well, yeah, it's a lot, but it's not a lot if it's just once. If you step back, that 100 million is basically that spread over 3 windows. Well, that's not the sort of budget and the sort of spending that you get for the Europe teams pushing for Europe. That's not what they do. They spend that sort of money every single summer. So, yeah, this season when we went again, I was glad. But no, I think certainly from my perspective, I think there's sections of the fan base who have always been and will always be anti-Gold, Sullivan and Brady. My personal view on it is that I think that time has come now. I think there's a clause in the contract of the stadium deal that says you'll have to fact check me here, but I think it's another couple of seasons until they can buy the stadium. And I think the generally accepted thing is that they'll end up, when that time comes, they'll buy the stadium, which makes it a far more attractive proposition, and then they'll sell up. And my opinion is, look, whether you agree with their methods or not, They're vocal, very public with a lot of the stuff they've done up until now. Whether you agree with those or not, the club is in a far better position financially than it was when they took over. However, I just think they're simply not wealthy enough to compete at that level. Their personal net wealth, the two of them, just isn't enough to compete with state-owned football clubs. Who, you even look at Everton. Everton's back is obscenely wealthy. Wolves, very, very wealthy owners. And it's time to want West Ham to be challenging in those positions. It's time for them to walk away in the very near future, in my opinion, I think. But what you've got to remember as well, just whatever happens, whatever they do, they will be remembered for the people who moved us away from Upton Park. That's going to be their legacy, even if we won the league next year.
Interesting. Yeah, I do. I have read that clause in the contract. I think I want to say it's after the 2022-23 season.
It rings a couple of bells, yeah. Yeah, I think I know it's coming up. I think there's a particular athletics tournament, because there's a new athletics stadium being built in Coventry in the Midlands in England, which will be the new home of UK athletics, and I think it's all tied in to that, basically. So basically, it doesn't need to be used for athletics anymore. Yeah.
Let's focus on actually before we talk about the team, the current season. I want to dive a bit deep into We Are West Ham.
Yeah.
So how did it start? How did you get into it?
So James, for those of you who don't know, I'm a sports journalist in London anyway, and I do a lot of radio stuff alongside the writing I do for newspapers and in London. So James Jones, who anyone who's listened to the We Are West Ham live radio show or the podcast before, James and I met. James actually founded West Ham World, which again has got a very significant Twitter following, and he started that a few years ago, just when he was at university. Started that then and grew it, and it's, a really successful platform. And so James was running that, and I just ran into James, or got introduced to James through some radio work I was doing for a radio station in London. He was doing a live radio show under the West Ham World banner at the time. He invited me on as a guest for a couple of shows with my journalistic background and the fact I support West Ham, and we just struck up a real rapport. And I ended up, rather than just going on as a guest, he then invited me to be his co-host. This was at the end of last season. I enjoyed doing it as well, and we decided that the partnership that we've got worked really well. So we launched We Are West Ham over the summer this year. Excuse me. Launched it over the summer. So we'd still do the live radio show, which is every Tuesday between 7 and 8 on Love Sport Radio. You can listen to that online and digital. And then we podcast that up as well, which is the We Are West Ham podcast, which is on iTunes, Spotify, all that sort of your usual spots. And we just, to be quite honest, we're launching a YouTube channel this year as well. So again, I'm sort of lucky with the job I do. Yeah, lucky with the job I do to have some good contacts. We're going to try and do something a bit different. So we've got to try and we have some really good West Ham guests on the show as well, which is brilliant. We had Tony Carr on last week. Martin Allen's come on the week before. John Moncur's regularly on. We have some really good and some really big names. So we're launching a YouTube channel soon. And I'm going to do some more sort of round the table video podcast, hour-long sort of interview sessions, just with some old West Ham players and West Ham players past and present. It's just, to be honest with you, it's just good fun. It ties in nicely with the work I do anyway. So I'm a sports journalist for my job. So it ties in nicely with that. And it's really, even no matter how well or how badly we're playing, it's just really nice it's never really a chore talking about West Ham. I do it anyway in my life and in my job. So me and James have got it. It's really good to we get a lot of interaction with the fans and callers into the show, messages, that sort of stuff. So it's just good. It's just nice to have that debate, and it's just good fun as much as anything else, really.
How did you guys get associated with Love Sport?
So I was on doing I do some co-hosting and some hosting for them anyway, just with some radio work that I do. So I got in it through that way. And Love Sport they do fan shows every night of the week. So there's a West Ham show, there's a Tottenham show, Chelsea show, Man United, I think. Yeah, so they do a lot of it's quite London based as well. So they do that anyway. And I present and co-host general sports shows for them already. And just found out they did the fan shows and got introduced to James through that. And it blossomed from there really. But obviously they reached out to James first of all when they were launching this fan show idea. They reached out to James because he was such his West Ham World was such a prominent voice and a prominent account in the West Ham Twitter sphere, if you will. Reached out to James, and that's where the show came from, and that was a story to where we are now.
Interesting. So those fan shows are, I mean, because you said you had a journalist background, and James in a way did as well because he had West Ham World. Are a lot of those fan shows hosted by journalist type of fans? Is it more? No, okay.
It's quite a mix, to be honest. I know the guy who does the Chelsea one, Dave Chidgey, Stanford Chidge. I know him very well, and his account, Chelsea Fancast, is a very prominent Chelsea account. And it's good. Dave Seeger does the Arsenal one. These are guys who I think Dave worked in a media background, but he was in more TV production, that sort of stuff. So it's very much the idea is it's by fans for fans. So it was just kind of I got into it, or I learned of it via my sort of journalistic roots, if you will. But James he works in a similar field to me, James. But he got introduced, or he got tapped up by Love Sport in the first place because his prominence as a prominent West Ham voice, if you will, so like online and on social media fronts.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the one thing that's really drawn me to soccer sport is I don't know who said this, but it's a quote like football without fans is nothing, or something along those lines. And I just feel like there's this culture especially in soccer, where the fans are, I don't know how best to say it. I guess there's no other way to say it besides they play a more prominent role in the culture of their sport compared to fans of American sport. Not saying that fans aren't important. Fans aren't important here in America, but it's just different. It's hard to put it into words, but I just think like fans are just more prominent, like I said, in the culture. And I think that's a perfect example, having these fan casts, these fan shows on sport radio. You would never ever have that here. There's no way. It will all be guys that were went to journalism school and so I've always found that I think I've always gravitated towards that.
I guess in Chicago though, you'd have a Cubs podcast or a Bears podcast by the fans. You get that, right?
Yeah. So ironically, the only Cubs and Bears podcasts that I listen to are through do you know The Athletic?
Yeah.
Because I know they're starting to expand in the UK as well. So I have a subscription to The Athletic, and so there are Cubs and Bears podcasts through The Athletic. But again, it's like the Cubs podcast, journalists, and it's fine. Like I actually love the Cubs journalists, or most of them, anyways. But I mean, I'm sure there are some. I've actually thought about starting my own Cubs podcast because, like I said, I'm obsessed with them. But yeah, you're definitely not going to get a fan cast or fan podcast type of thing on actual, sport radio, talk radio. That's just never happened. I've always found that interesting, though. I give you guys credit as fans for, I guess, keeping up that culture. I don't know where it started, probably back in the day, but I've always found that interesting. Now, segueing into the season now. So obviously, The second season under Pellegrini. The first one went, I think it went good, not great, bit inconsistent last season. And one of the points of interest for this team was to be a bit more consistent.
Yeah.
I listened to one of your recent episodes. Because you missed an episode recently, like a couple.
I missed the latest one on Tuesday. I missed. Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember if you were on this one or not, but you guys talked about how classic it was for us to beat United 2-0 at the weekend and then lose to Oxford 4-0.
Yeah.
But okay, so what are your thoughts so far this season? We started off strongly, beat teams like United. We're had a few clean sheets in a row, and now we're sort of in this bit of a rut where we haven't won in a month. Classic West Ham, or signs of more troubling things to come? You think we can bounce back from it? What are your thoughts?
I think before the Everton game, and even like after the Crystal Palace game, I kind of thought, look, it's all right. This is where if you'd said to someone at the beginning of the season, after 8 games, you'll have lost twice, and that'll be it. And then you'll have picked up a few. You'll be unbeaten away, and you'll have lost twice after 8 games, and you'll be sitting in, I think we were 8th before the Everton game. You'd have gone, yeah, fair enough. We had Man United and Man City in that spell. So you go, yeah, we'll probably lose to City, we'll probably lose to United. All right, it was a different way round. We end up losing to Palace and beating United, obviously. I think the away games at Aston Villa and Brighton, we were the second best team in both of them games and managed to escape with a point. Right. I think Declan Rice said it after the Aston Villa game that was a game we would have lost last season. And I think he was right. And I think Brighton was the same. We managed to escape from those games with points. And then I thought against Crystal Palace, we were the better team. We were sloppy with our chances. Lanzini had one at the end of the first half, should have slotted that way. It's 2-0, it's a different game.
As well in the first half.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just think it's just frustrating, really, to be honest. I think after yesterday, you hoped for a bit of a response, and you hoped that after the international break, everyone had some time together to work on some stuff, that they'd come out the blocks flying. So it's just frustrating, really. That's the only thing from my perspective. I think it's frustrating, but I think it's the next game is very important now, and it's such an age-old football cliche whenever you lose that the next game is really important. But I think this one now, after that, there'd been such a long period of time with the international break, that Crystal Palace defeat was still rankling with fans a little bit, and then to come out and just roll over against Everton like that is understandably getting people a little bit worried. But I think it's what happens the next game that matters the most. I remember saying that after the Aston Villa game, thinking, we were poor here. We didn't deserve a point out of that. I was up there at Villa Park for the game. And I remember thinking, yeah, we were poor, and it's really important what we do after that. And then we went to beat Man United. So it's like, you know what, 4 points from those 2 games all of a sudden looks good. So I just think that the next spell of games we've got up till Christmas, we've got some of the big boys coming up. But I think Sheffield United at home is the next game. That's enormous for reasons, obviously, for the bit of rivalry between the two. You know, I've been looking forward to this game since the fixtures came out. I've looked for Sheffield United at home first. I can't wait. So I think it's a huge game, but I've got a good feeling about it. I think the atmosphere will be good. Back at London Stadium, obviously. So no, I'm all right. I think sitting in 10th, not ideal, but it's very easy at this stage of the season to get bogged down in where you're sitting in the league. But ultimately, I think we've shown enough. But I just think they're our best players, Anderson in particular, and Haller. I think he's been okay. I just think they need to step it up a gear leading up to Christmas. I think, and that's what I want to see from the next few weeks.
Yeah, so you started talking about some players. I wanted to ask you, where do you think, or who do you think in our squad has maybe not met your expectations? You mentioned Anderson, who's a player for me that hasn't met my expectations. Where else in the squad do you think that, you look at and say, man, he really needs to improve a bit? And then also on the flip side, where do you think where do you think we've been playing well? Who have been sort of our shining lights so far?
I think Declan Rice has been such an easy one to say, but I think he's been the standout performer, not just because of his age, but just because he's been probably our best player for most games. I just think with Anderson, it's frustrating. I was having this conversation yesterday, just saying how I don't really know what his niche is. I don't know what his thing is. Do you know what I mean? With Lanzini, you know what his brand is. You know he's short, nippy, gets in and amongst players, like plays between the lines, little zippy 1-2s. That's his brand, and that's what he's good at. With Anderson, I feel he's been there a while now, and he's sort of had time to bed in, and he knows the pace of the game now. And I feel like this is the season where he sort of needed to be stepping up a little bit and grabbing some games by the scruff of the neck. Absolutely, yeah. So I do want to see more from Anderson. I'm a bit sort of skeptical as whether we will or not. I think he may have sort of hit his level as it is. Lanzini was absolutely woeful at Everton yesterday, just absolutely embarrassing. I don't know. It just feels like we're just waiting for it to spark. I think Yarmolenko's done really well this year, which is really good to see. Sort of, he was the only one who looked half decent against Everton. I just think Fabianski. I think that sort of spine of the team, if you like, if Lanzini's on his game, I think we've got a fantastic spine of the team. I think Diop's good. I'm a bit. Bonner always just makes me nervous. I don't know why. I think it's more of a personal thing. But Fabianski's outstanding. I think that's a huge loss having him injured. Roberto again looked okay yesterday, but he looks quite slow and robotic. Declan Rice is outstanding. We'll do, if we keep hold of him for another 2 years, we have and will sort of build the team around him. Yeah, I think those front three, which are supposed to be the most, or the front four, if you like, are the most dangerous part of the team going into the season. I think Haller, I'm all right with Haller so far. I think he started okay. It's one of them. I do feel like you should let these players bed in a bit, and I think he's hit the ground running fair. Yeah, he hasn't ripped. He's been good. But Anderson's the one I want to see more from Anderson. And I think if I was Pellegrini and I was in charge of recruitment at West Ham or Huselos, the next thing I'd be doing is getting another Cheku Kuyati in his prime, because I love Mark Noble more than anyone, but I think Declan Rice is very much a defensive midfielder, and we need someone who can just boss that midfield like Kuyate used to, like Yaya Toure used to for Man City. We need someone who's a lot more athletic and mobile, who can dominate that middle of the park and feed the players going forward and let them do what they do. So I think progress is clearly being made, which is the most important thing for me. I think football fans, we're all guilty of it. We want things to happen overnight. We've bought a £45 million player. Oh, fantastic. We're going to get into Europe. While that would be lovely, I think patience is the key, but as long as you can keep seeing progress, and you mentioned the manager, I think he's by far the best thing about the football club by a million miles. And I think with him in charge, I'm happy with him in charge. And I think, as like I said, if we improve again this year, that's all that's important.
Yeah, a lot there. I would agree. And Thomas Lonergan, who's one of our regulars, he said Anderson's been very poor this season. Only really good game he had was against Norwich. He needs to be dropped. You're starting to hear a lot of that talk on Twitter, on social, about Anderson needing to be dropped. I mean, I would say that, okay, especially the last couple performances he's had, they have been a bit poor, and like you said, he hasn't made that next step yet, in my opinion.
No.
And he was very, and even before he started with us, he had this reputation of being very streaky. So I think he had 7 of his 9 goals or 7 of his 10 goals last season within a 2 or 3 month span, and the rest were, So I think he is this type of player that can really get on fire. However, that's just not going to cut it, especially if you want a team to be a little bit more consistent. One of your record signings needs to be. But, yeah, I don't know what his niche is either. I don't know. He seems to not use his pace to attack a fullback. He slows things down on the counterattack instead of cutting in or attacking to the left. Doesn't seem to really be getting balls in too much. Doesn't seem to be using his left foot at all. Very frustrating. And then Lanzini, I do agree that he's sort of the anchor that can sort of the midfield to attack. And when he doesn't play well, we don't play well. I thought the Bournemouth match typified this. He didn't start that match. I forgot who did in his place. But once he came on in the 60s,
Fornals, I think.
That was a Fornals? Okay. But once he came on in the 60th or 65th minute, our attack completely changed. We were the better side. We eventually got the equalizer. I thought we were actually going to win that game. Yeah, I think he really needs to be more consistent because he's sort of that anchor that sort of leads everything into attack. I do think the defense, though, has been, although we've given up two goals in the last 3 games. Ogbonna, I actually think he makes me nervous sometimes too. I used to dislike him. I actually think he's been the better of the center backs, in my opinion. I know Diop almost had an own goal, Everton as well.
I don't know. I think, to be honest, I find with the defence that I think the centre halves are unfairly exposed sometimes by the fact that the 2 wing backs, Fredericks and Masuaku, I know Cresswell came in for a couple of games and did well, but I think the two wing backs are just not defensively good enough. So therefore, Diop and Ogbonna, or whether it's Ogbonna or Balbuena, but Ogbonna's, that's been the 2 most of the time this season. They're too often put into positions where they're exposed by their wing backs, which forces them into making some rash challenges or rash decisions. And I think that's unfair on them sometimes, because you'll have Fredericks or Masuaku will be galloping up the pitch, trying to join in the attacks because that's their strength and they're attacking fullbacks. But then when the other team counter attacks and they're still stranded halfway up the pitch, you've got 2 centre halves trying to defend against 3 or 4 attacking players with maybe Declan Rice helping out. They have to do something rash, otherwise they're just going to get played round. So I think them 2 are excellent. I just think Fredericks I do like Fredericks, and I think he'll come good. I think he's progressing and improving. The left back situation is an odd one. I'm a big fan, as anyone who listens to the show will know, I'm a huge fan of King Arthur Masuaku, but it's more through the character rather than his footballing ability. I really want him to come well, but I think the defensive side of his game just isn't good enough, which is a shame, because I think if it was, I think he'd be an outstanding European grade left back.
Yeah, the left back position has been interesting to me for the last couple of years. I feel like we have a good performing left back. Like, for example, Masuaku had an excellent start to the season. Was one of the best left backs in the league. And then he gets sent off. Then Cresswell comes on and he plays really well. And he has a couple of games and now he's injured. So then Masuaku comes in. I just feel like it's a yo-yo position where not one person can
hold it down. Yeah,
hold it down.
I think it's peculiar they gave him both 5-year deals as well. I think that was really bizarre. Masuaku I understood, and I thought that was a show of confidence in him to then give the same one to Cresswell. But I'm hoping that that's just to make sure that he's tied down, so we sell him and we actually get some money for him. I think that's probably more where that came from.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised when Arthur got a 5-year deal as well. I don't know. I hope one of them can just keep it down and play consistently moving forward. We'll see how it happens. So where do we go from here? I'm interested in your thoughts actually about if and what we need to buy in January. I know you mentioned buying sort of a check in his prime type of player. But anything for January? Is that still our number one priority right now?
I mean, January is one of those. It's that window, isn't it, where teams are getting less and less confident, or less and less spendy, if you like, in January. They just don't do it anymore. It's too much of a risk to a lot of teams. You don't get good value for your money as well, because teams don't want to sell their players in January because it disrupts their flow of the season. So I think, West Ham more than any, especially with the owners we've got, are aware of the value in players. So I don't expect us to do that much. I don't, and again, because I don't feel any position on the pitch is an absolute emergency, that's why I don't think they'll do anything. It's not like we're clearly screaming out for, I don't know, just say a striker or a left back or whatever. I feel like we've got enough in each position for the board and the manager and the club as a whole to kind of say to fans, almost rightfully so, and I understand it, to say, look, we're not going to just go and panic buy anything, because we're not going, well, hopefully we're not going to be in trouble by the time January comes around. We're probably going to be sitting there or thereabouts where we are at the moment. So I can't see us doing much. Like I say, I think for next summer, the central midfield position, like a bit of an Ndombele type. You've seen Tottenham go out and do that. You had the Liverpool game today. Gini Wijnaldum was all over the place for Liverpool. Pogba's the same for Man United. Kante's that for Chelsea. I think that's what we need to complement Declan Rice, and I think that would sort out the balance of the team quite nicely. So if we're going to go and spend big again next summer, then I think that's where I'd go. And then again, I feel like it would just be another bit of clearing out some dead wood, as we did in the summer. I thought we did that really well, and I think another January window, or not January particularly, but another window of that, where perhaps you get rid of one of the left backs, and then you spend a decent bit of money on a guaranteed starter, and hopefully Albion Ayeti comes good. I don't think we're going to see enough of him yet. So no, I think we're just in a position which is nice, where we're not screaming out for something desperately. We're not like, oh, we're so bad on, I don't know, on the right wing, or we're so bad in any particular position. I feel like whenever we put a team out, on the whole, you might go, oh, we could improve there, but it's not an absolute calamity. It's not when you're starting Sofiane Feghouli on the right of midfield, or, like I said, mentioned him already, Harvard Nordveit in the centre of defence, when you're just like, what on earth is going on with this football club? I don't feel it's like that at the moment, and I think that's a good position to be in. I think you look at teams like Man City, who are obviously at the top end of the league, Liverpool as well. They're in a position now where the foundation is solid, and there's just little improvements every year. They're improving on the perceived weakest points of their team, but rather than being really weak and it being an emergency, they're just going, right, this is where we'll improve this summer. This is where we'll improve this summer. And I think that's where we've slowly manoeuvred the club into that sort of position, where we're not panic buying at all, and we can actually do a bit of strategic planning for a bit longer term, which, again, that's obviously comes with being under a manager like Pellegrini as well. And I certainly hope he signs beyond the 2 years left I think he's got on his deal.
Yeah, that's another question that I have, probably for another day. What happens what happens if they don't extend Pellegrini's deal, or what happens post Pellegrini? World-class manager, as you said, and it'll be a tough act to follow, whoever. Hopefully that doesn't happen for several more seasons, but for another day, I guess. We are at the hour mark, so I'm gonna wrap this up. What we do at the end of these interviews is we sort of have these rapid fire questions that we ask our guests. We call them quick fire questions.
Hit me.
Yeah, there's just 11 of them, actually. I thought there were 10, but there are 11. Yeah, sure. So first one, meat pie or apple pie?
Oh, goodness me. Apple.
Who is your favorite current West Ham player?
Favorite current player? I've got to say King Arthur Masuaku, because everyone will think that's who I'm going to say. But no, Declan Rice by far.
All right. What or who frustrates you the most in this current squad?
Probably Arthur Masuaku, because I want him to do so well.
Got it. Would you rather win the FA Cup or finish top four?
FA Cup, hands down. That's what football fans go to football for the glory and for days like that. So yeah.
What about West Ham do you love?
Just it being part of you. It's just brilliant to feel. I know, it's just great to be part of that family, and just the atmosphere. Away games have always been my favourite thing. The seasons were my favourite seasons supporting West Ham, whether we're good or bad, were away games. So I'm going to say, yeah, atmospheres at away games.
What about West Ham do you hate?
Goodness me. That's a difficult one. What about West Ham do I hate? I think it's the frustration that comes with it, and how much of an impact it has on my mood. That's I think the fact that the people around me get the rough end of my mood after we lose or don't play well.
I feel you. What sound makes you happy?
What?
What sound?
Bubbles.
Nice.
All day. That shout, that'll always stir something up in me.
Oh yeah. What is your favorite curse word?
Slag.
What is that? I'm assuming it's British slang. Never heard of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's kind of just I don't know. It come from a derogatory term for someone who has quite a lot of sexual partners. But now it's just kind of quite a colloquial thing you say amongst mates, like you slag. So yeah, slag's a good one.
Gotcha. What team do you love to beat the most?
Tottenham. Hands down.
Name a player, past or present, that epitomizes Westham.
Paolo Di Canio. I think raw passion, absolute skillful, like brilliantly skillful, wonderful to watch on his day. Someone you can never really forget about. If they're around, you know that Paolo Di Canio's there, but can also let you down and be a little bit inconsistent as well. So Paolo Di Canio, definitely.
And the last one, if you could take a time machine back to experience any situation, any game, anything having to do with West Ham, where would you go?
Any West Ham game. I'm going to. Oh goodness, I've been so many, and there's so many. I would say the 2006 FA Cup final when Paul Konchesky's cross come shot nestled into the far post of Pepe Reina's net and turn in, and have never seen such a joyful look on my dad's face in his whole life, and just having that moment there with my dad at the cup final, thinking we were actually going to win the FA Cup. So yeah, I'd say when that ball hit the net, then
yeah, what a goal that was. He definitely didn't mean to do that. That's
for sure. He'll tell you otherwise. That's for sure.
Well, hey man, that's it for the quickfire questions and for the conversation. Really enjoyed getting to know you and talking West Ham with you, Will. Really appreciate you coming on too. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks very much, Justin. I appreciate it. And for anyone listening, just tune into We Are West Ham if they've got time every Tuesday, 7 p.m. UK time. Get on the podcast and get on the Twitter. We're always happy to hear from anyone, but wherever they are in the world. So appreciate you taking the time, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Appreciate it. Stay on the line. I'm just going to end this broadcast and we can chat really quickly.
Cheers, guys.
All right, thanks.